Hello, hello. How are you? Welcome to episode 245. My name is Rachel. Thank you so much for joining us and for being here today. It is Tuesday, June 21st, 2022, and I want to welcome you to this place. Thank you so much for coming back. It's been a couple of weeks, and it's funny because I always feel like when we have these, the podcast is sort of twice a month, first week of the month and the third week of the month. And I always find that 2 weeks in between, there's just so much life that happens. And then I'm kind of looking back going, holy smokes, it's been 2 weeks, but it feels like a month. So I hope you're all doing really, really super well. It's really good to see everybody. I want to say hello to everybody that's in the chat. We've got Eve and Amanda, Dion, Vicky, Sabella, Tessa, Mandy, Glenda, Carol, Christine, Charlotte. I know people are just joining and getting up and running. You can hear it in my voice. I am still sick. I've been coughing and hacking all month. I've been really feeling poorly, which was kind of too bad because Mike and I both celebrated our birthdays this month. I'll show you a little bit about that a little bit later. And I've just been it's been really hard to kick this and to get this gone. So I'm hoping that I don't cough too much, and I'm hoping my voice holds out, but we'll just see how it goes and play it by ear. So thank you so much to the Patreon community and for the support that you guys continue to usher out every month, whether it's in words or actions or just being a part of the community, supporting one another, your kindness towards one another and to me. I really appreciate just the ongoing camaraderie and fellowship that you guys show one another. I think it's just really wonderful. I put out a really big post last Monday, so a week ago yesterday. If you have not seen it, Ketchup and Pickles is linked in the show notes at patreon.com/wool and spinning. And if you guys are curious about what's going on in the community, maybe you're not a part of the community yet and you would like to join, or you are and you're just getting caught up on everything, click on the June 2022 Ketchup and Pickles post. Thank you so much to Amy who let me know that link wasn't working yesterday. It's all up to date now and it's all fixed. So thank you, Amy. Oh, I hope you're feeling a bit better, Wendy. She's recovering from COVID. Dion is washing fleece. But she doesn't feel like washing fleece. I getcha. I totally understand. I get like that in the summer. I know I should wash fleece when it's really super warm and I could get them dry really quickly. And then there's the other part is like, I don't want to. It's like the grumpy little toddler or something. Thank you so much to those who are tuning in for the first time and just giving the show a try. Maybe you just heard about us and you just heard about the community. Maybe you found me in Ply Magazine from an article I've written in the past or word of mouth. So thank you so much for checking out the show, and I hope that you find something here that you enjoy and that you like. We talk mostly about spinning and using your hand spun yarns, although I've been having sort of not so much luck with that lately. I feel like everything I start I rip out, but seasons of making, seasons of crafting, that's just the way it is sometimes. And I will link the show notes in the live chat for you, and they're also down below in the box so that you guys can find all of that. And I will also link the Ketchup and Pickles that I was mentioning about with the housekeeping post. That's also in the live chat, and you guys can find that there. Oh my goodness, Sam. So spiralized zucchini is like my favorite thing in the whole wide world. I put everything on spiralized zucchini, and I know you guys call them courgettes, but I put everything on spiralized zucchini. And the newest thing that I found is spiralize it and then air fry it. It's like life-changing. You don't even have to air fry it for that long. It's like 7 or 8 minutes. It crisps it up a little bit. It is so good. Anyways, it's one of my favorites. I love talking about food. So for June, for our sort of ongoing giveaway, I think me and the kids will make up some roll eggs, or we'll make up a bat, or we'll do something. Let me know what the hardest thing is you've ever done in your making. So what is the hardest thing that you've ever done in your making? And you can let us know over at patreon.com with that link that I just posted, probably over here in the live chat when you're watching the replay. Follow that, the post to the post on Patreon and let me know what the hardest thing was. And me and the kids are going to make up a whole bunch of Puni style Rolegs, go through and see if we can find some fun colors and make some fun stuff. And I will show you later in the show what is possible with some of those sets of Rolegs. So definitely throw that in. Oh, Sam, let me like count the ways. She's like, need an air fryer. Convince me. Go. Okay, you guys, tell her why she needs an air fryer, because number one, if you cook oil free, which I do, we don't use any oil. An air fryer is like the number one way to get fries, because you don't need to use oil in your air fryer. So chop up your potatoes like you would for fries, throw them in the air fryer for 20 minutes, and you've got perfect fries with no oil, because oil is 4,000 calories a pound. So you don't need that. Your body doesn't need that. So yeah, my air fryer is like my like lifesaver. Yeah, so yeah, just eat all the potatoes. Read The Starch Solution by John McDougall. Great book. There is a recipe swap in Slack. We don't need to add it. There already is one. It's the channel is called #recipes. So we don't use any olive oil. There's lots of information out there about all of that. Yeah, so good. You don't need any oil. All right, so let's talk about what I've got sitting here. So for Mike's and Mai's birthday, we actually went to the island. We went camping for the weekend. It was awesome. We rented my mom a trailer. They dropped it off, they picked it up. It was amazing. So we had our trailer there. And then my brother and my sister-in-law brought up their trailer and all of that. And it was really, really fun. And for the first time in 20 years, my brother got me out mountain biking. So this is a photo of us out on the trail. I hadn't mountain biked for 20 years. It was so much fun. That's my brother there. And he's my younger brother by 20 months. And then that's Nora directly sort of on my side there, and my niece, Claire. And we had so much fun. He got me out on my bike. I have the same bike that I've always had. And then that in the very background there, you can see those two little figures back there. That's my nephew, Alec, and then James. And he loved it. So we spent the weekend mountain biking. We went out a couple of times. It was super, super fun. And then my brother actually took out James on his own, because he's older than the other kids. He can do more. And he was able to take him out. And it was just, we had a great time. So we were gone for about 5 days, 5 nights, 6 days-ish, traveling on the first and last day. And it was really a lot of fun. So that was how we spent my birthday and Mike's birthday, and it was really great. And it was really fun to kind of get back onto my bike again. I was amazed that my bike actually did really, really well, so that was really fun. And we were just north of Nanaimo, for those who know British Columbia and know this area, so it's really, really fun. So I have been spinning up just tons of singles, and so I've got singles here. I finished these this morning. We'll talk about those. And I wanted to show you sort of what happens to my yarns before and after finishing. So I've got a couple of examples here for you, and this obviously is fresh off the wheel. It hasn't been finished either. And then I've got the Supercoils that we were working on, inquiries and explorations, over the last couple of weeks, and I wanted to share that with you because I don't do a lot of textured yarn spinning, and I wanted to spend a minute just showing it to you and sharing it with you, because I know a lot of people sort of have questions about some of that. And then finally, on the Wool Circle this month, we were prepping a summer spin that I'm working on, that I will be working on. I haven't started it yet, and it's a Cotswolds fleece, and I'll just sort of speak to it really quickly. And then last but not least, I've got a finished weaving project to share with you that is actually not finished, but I've woven off the first few, and I've given 2 away for the teachers for their gifts for the end of the school year. And then I've got the 3rd one here, sitting here ready to give to the kids' tutor that they see twice a week. But the last session for that for the school year isn't until next Thursday. So no, this Thursday. Maybe it's this Thursday. I'm not really sure. And so we'll give that to her this week. And so that'll be gone. But I wanted to obviously share it with you guys before I passed all this stuff along. So without further ado, let's get into the show, and I'll see you guys on the other side. before we go into talking about yarn, which is why we're all here, Christine has a really, really good point about the air fryer. She was saying, no, sorry, Dion had a really good point about the air fryer. It doesn't make the house hot. So I have wall ovens, and they're built in. It's a double wall oven, and I find that part of the house gets really, really warm in the summer when they're running. And they're true convection ovens, so they move the air around really beautifully, and it's really nice, but they do heat up the house. And I do find with the air fryer, it's sort of more it's more concentrated. It's in one place. The heat is right there. It's on the counter. It's a little bit smaller. And then it doesn't heat everything up quite as much, because I use the air fryer at least daily, because I eat so many potatoes. I live on potatoes. I am a starchivore. So yeah, I do use it a lot. Yeah, so Sharon says, finally some sun here in Pacific Northwest of Washington. We are just having the worst luck in terms of weather here. I know many of you are in the midst of a heat wave, and I feel ya. But we have had like cloud and cold, and like I was wearing my down vest yesterday. Like we have not had a great spring at all. And as we get closer and closer to the summer solstice, which I think is today or tomorrow, the 22nd, right? It's just not feeling like summer at all. It just feels like late winter. So yeah, very strange. Okay, let's talk about singles first, and then we'll talk about the Supercoil yarn afterwards. So what I've been doing, I shared this with you guys last time, so I'll maybe encourage you to go back to the previous episode and have a look at sort of what the project is that I'm working on and what I'm kind of spinning for right now. But I finished this yarn. Let me just get this out of the way a little bit. I finished this yarn. This is an organic Polworth. I had bought this on a sale at Webb's years ago, like I want to say back in 2014, maybe 2015. And my plan is to spin for some yardage, some fabric, where I would hold in the warping one strand of this with one strand of this, which I'll talk about in just a moment. And kind of go one for one as I warp up. And I'm thinking sort of about probably about a 22-inch wide piece of fabric, I think is what I've looked at. I'm using a sewing pattern from Get Weaving with Sarah, which is Sarah Howard. And so what I did to finish this, that's what I really want to talk about, was I put this, after it was skeined, I tie my singles yarns in quite a few spots. I tend to do 4 to 6 ties around. Oh, thank you, Christine. Oh, the UK news was full of people watching the sunrise of Stonehenge because the summer solstice is today. Thank you. I couldn't remember if it was today or tomorrow. I'm always like, which one is it? So what I do is we have a double sink. We don't have a farm sink that's just one. We have a double sink. And so what I do is I fill the one side up as high as possible with hot water. And I put soap in there. And then on the other side, I fill it up with as cold water as I possibly can get out of our taps. But then I dump a tray of ice cubes into it. And I leave it. I walk away for a couple of minutes just so that the cold water can get as cold as possible to get like the ice cubes kind of, to cool the water down even a little bit more. And then I don't agitate the yarn at all. What I have found works really, really super well is just by taking the skein and I literally just, let me just move these out of the way for just a sec. I literally just drop it down into the water like this and kind of push it down into the hot water. And I often have to wear gloves because the hot water is like really hot. And I just push it down, and once it's saturated and once it's completely wet, I just leave it. I just let it kind of spread out, let it bloom, let it do its thing. I don't agitate it. I don't squish it around. I don't use plungers. I tried that. I did do that once, and I lost half the skein of yarn because it was so matted and tangled and just, it was awful. So I've never done that since. So I just let it kind of, come into the water, the hot water. It just, everything opens and blooms and moves around in the water. And still wearing gloves, I lift it up out of the water and I just let the water drain off of the skein for a little bit. It's, you know, it's fairly, you know, it's heavy and it just hangs and it just drains. And then I grab the skein with my hand like this, and I kind of like turn it around my hand, and I wring out as much of that hot water as I possibly can. And then I do the exact same thing again. I hold the skein up like this, and I gently put it down into the cold water. Again, I don't agitate it, I don't move it around. I just put it down into the cold water, and I allow it to sort of move into the water on its own and move around. It's completely wet by that point, so it doesn't need a lot of help to, you know, take up that space in that cold water. And I do that 3 or 4 times, back and forth between the hot and the cold, but I don't agitate. But what the results are is, you know, I end up with a structurally stable yarn. This was spun to about 24 wraps per inch, and the finished yarn is basically the same. It didn't bloom a ton, and it's got a little bit of elasticity, not a ton, which is totally fine. But it's, you know, it's structurally stable. I can't break the singles, like I would have to really pull them apart. And it makes and it has created a balanced yarn. So this one is washed and finished, and this is about, I think this one's about 700 and something yards, I think. I should have written it down and I didn't. Because I have to figure out the yardage before I warp this stuff up anyways, so I wasn't too concerned. So this is what it looks like prior. So before I pull the 2 skeins apart, this one is not finished. This one's not washed. It has not gotten wet yet. And that's what this looks like. So it's got some curly cues in it, and you can see how the finished skein, it's evened out. Everything is, you know, doing its thing. It's smooth. I haven't thwacked it. I haven't whacked it to half to death. I haven't roughed up the surface. It's still really super smooth. But you can see that, like, there's some curly cues in this one. And if I unskein this for you guys, so that you can really see it, you can see that prior to finishing it, this is what this looks like. And it's got this lovely, even sort of, you know, curl to it, even though this has been sitting here for over 2 weeks waiting for this. It's waiting for its moment under the lights so that I can tell you guys about it. You can see it's got this lovely crimp and curl, and, you know, it's got this sort of bounce to it, you know, and it just pops right back. It hasn't sort of been tamed yet, and it's got this sort of wave to it. That's that underlying curl and twist and crimp to it. So, you know, post-washing, all of this kind of washes out and calms it, and you know, the reality is I've partially fulled this. That's what's happened. So I just wanted to give you guys that visual to be able to see these two side by side, because sometimes, you know, it's hard to tell. You know, whether or not, like, for one, if your singles yarns are adequately twisted, and then 2, how do they change, and what does that look like? And what are you going for? What do you want your finished yarns to look like? Like, I want these singles to still be quite worsted looking. I spun them continuous back, and we'll talk about how I spun them in just a minute. But, you know, I want them to kind of have a certain look coming off the wheel, knowing that that will create a structurally stable finished yarn after washing. Ramen noodles. Totally. That's totally what it looks like, Charlotte. Yeah, it looks like noodles. Totally. You guys are so funny. That's absolutely right. You always see things that I don't because I'm busy talking. If I spun that, I would think it was overspun. Yeah, that's why I wanted to show you, Dorothy, because I was reflecting on it, and I was thinking about it, and I was like, I bet you people would think that this was overspun, but it's actually, like, in my opinion, perfect. So, you know, I have a pretty high opinion of my singles. But I've spun a lot of singles. I've worked to sort of perfect what I like in my singles yarn. Somebody else might have different ideas and different opinions about what they like in their finished yarns. I've also played a lot with finishing. You know, I used to thwack everything, and so I have those yarns to look at and say, you know, I like the smoother surface, and what does that look like? And how do I preserve that? So These singles that are going with this yarn, they're being spun sort of to go together. And I also did those singles that was all that Hello yarn, the Falkland and the Merino and everything, the Merino Tussa. So I've got those yarns kind of sitting on the back burner as well, waiting for some of this weaving as well. This was Northbound Knitting. It's gray merino. I bought it like, again, probably 6-7 years ago. And it was funny when I was spinning it because it's two different sort of colorways. And I put that in quotes, colorways, because one was very green and one was very, had a lot of pinks in it. And I don't know, I should have uploaded a photo to show you guys this prior to spinning it, because I never got to show it to you like while it was on the wheel. I never showed it to you when it was sort of in like in progress, if you will. So this is, if I just make it fit for a minute, because it's kind of taking over the screen here for you. This was what these braids look like originally. So you can see they're both gray. They both have that gray undyed background. But then the one had that limey green added and the other one had that sort of reddy, pinky purple added. But then they both had that tealy blue. And again, this is a great example of a spinning dyed fiber from the same dyer. They use the same dyes. So you can combine their colorways quite well. That's a great question, Dorothy. Do your singles and other breeds also look like that? Yes, but they don't necessarily have as much crimp and curl because they're maybe, like with the Falkland, it's a longer staple, Corriedale, longer staple, Massam, longer staple. So you're gonna get that same look, but it's gonna be longer. The crimp and the curl isn't gonna be quite so close together and quite so short. It's gonna be longer. Does that make sense? So yes, but not as short. But it'll have that same ramen noodle effect. It'll just be longer. So it's so interesting, Eve, that you would say, I didn't know that merino came in gray. I'm not sure that this is actually gray merino. When I sat down to start spinning it, and I don't know if you can see in the photo, it's not quite detailed enough. It almost kind of looks more like heathered, like there was white in there, there was a bit of gray in there, there was some black in there. I'm wondering if this is more of like a blend. It maybe is still merino. There are darker colored merino sheep out there. Some of the meat merinos can be quite dark, but I don't know that this is like a true oatmeal, like what you'll get in like BFL. I have no idea. Like I don't have access to the original fiber and where the source was and where it came from. And it's like 7 years old. So when I was spinning this, you could see the heathering of the fibers and I was like, I wonder. But it does make for a really beautiful braids of yarn. Like they're really pretty. So I started this 10 days ago. It was after the last podcast, but before we left for Nanaimo. And I feel like with this yarn, I spun every single inch. And I'll show you why. The reason is because if you watch my hands here, I used the continuous backwards draft just like I did for all of these other single spinning that I've been doing. It's just that when I'm going back, like my hand is moving, it's not very long. It's like inch, inch, inch on, inch, inch, inch on. And I feel like I spun every single inch of these singles. Like they just wouldn't end. And I know 10 days is really fast and that's not a lot of spinning time, but I took both of the braids and I divided them each 8 times. So I had 8 strips of fiber. So I divided them 7 times. I had 8 strips of fiber. I pre-drafted them. And I just felt like each strip was so long and I felt like I was spinning every single inch, because with like Falkland, Corriedale, BFL, when I spin that stuff for singles, even the Polworth, this staple is longer. So your hands are a little bit further apart and you're spinning more like you know, 2.5 inches where you're drafting back further. So you're literally doing double the spinning because of this being merino. That's how I felt. And I mean, really, when you think about it, that's the case. Like for one draft of Corriedale, you're doing 2 of merino. So it just felt like this was very labor intensive, if that makes sense. So yeah. So I'll show you if anybody has any questions about, yeah, the never ending fiber pile. That's exactly it, Dion. And I know all of you have had spins like that. So there's a bigger skein and then there's a smaller skein. The bigger skein, I stopped skeining it so that I wouldn't have one giant jumbo skein because they're actually really hard to deal with when you're washing. So when I thought that I was about halfway through the, bobbin, I finished off I finished off the skein and started a new one. So once again, we see I haven't finished this or washed this yet, but again, you see ramen noodles. I love that. It's so like, it just makes so much sense. The ramen noodle effect. So, you know, if I were to start tugging on these and started to really like play with them, they would come undone, you know, because the twist isn't being held particularly well. But as long as I keep these under tension and I keep the skein like skeined, you know, and I keep it tied like this skein here, you know, they're structurally stable and structurally fine. And I'll wash these once the podcast is over. So the big skein, which is the one that's here in my hand, this one is about 400 yards. We'll see what it is after washing and finishing, but it's about 400 yards. And this one is about 600 yards, just shy of 600 yards. I had 280 wraps. So whatever 280 times 2 is, that was what this one came out as. So what is it? I'm trying to think, 540 yards. So I've ended up with more than enough for the warp that I want for the fabric that I'm doing. So I'll keep these skeined until I wash these 3 after the podcast. So that's kind of what they look like. I hope that is helpful. I hope that is something that you can use in your own spinning when you're getting ready to spin singles. And I did use 560. Thank you. It's hard to do math when I'm talking. I started off on my Magicraft Suzy Pro using my fastest ratio like I always do, because I always spin at 27:1. But in the end, let me just double check. In the end, I ended up going down with this merino, and I probably could have stayed at the slightly higher ratio, but I ended up going down to 15:1 because I was just finding, I think with being sick and just sort of everything that's been going on, I wasn't treadling particularly slowly. I feel like I was treadling faster than I normally would, and I just was finding that the twist was building up a bit too much. Maybe that's why the spin felt like it took me a bit longer, because I was just moving more slowly. So I did spin these on a lower ratio and just kind of sped my feet up a little bit, and that was fine. And they'll wash and finish well for the piece of fabric that I want to make. And the long-term plan is to weave yardage for some sort of a garment. I'm not sure what it's going to look like yet. With the type of yardage that I'm getting, I've actually been really, really tempted to possibly look at like some sort of a wrap dress or something, like something that comes across that like ties here. It would be completely different for me and something totally like out of my, like what I normally would wear. But I also, it would be a really good use of fabric. So I'm kind of thinking about that in the back of my mind. There's some really good indie pattern designers, sewing pattern designers, and there are some really pretty wrap dresses that I thought I would have a look at maybe. The other option was just to do some sort of sweatshirt type shirt, a little bit blockier, a little bit more ease than I normally maybe would wear, just to show off the fabric. So that's sort of in the back of my mind. I'm really honestly not sure. Yeah, give it a try, Dion, and report back. Let me know. Let me know what you think. And then what we made in Queries was this Supercoils. So what we did, Queries is one of the spin groups that we meet twice a month and on Saturdays. Unfortunately, there's currently no space in there, but if you are interested in the future, let me know and I'll let you know if there's a spot available at that time. What we did was we did some core spinning because people wanted a review on core spinning. We've done core spinning in the community quite a number of times. There's lots of videos for those who are part of the Patreon on core spinning. But the kids and I had made a whole bunch of roll lags back in the fall, and they had put like all sorts of colors and craziness and neon, and I mean, like you name it, it's in here. It's like all these crazy colors that obviously I don't wear. I don't tend to spin these crazy neon colors. This is actually neon green. There's neon yellow, neon pink. There is even somewhere in here, there's neon orange. It's right there. But the kids were just having a lot of fun with my blending board, and they were just making this crazy yarn. And so we did a review of core spinning. And then there was a discussion about like cocoons and beehives and making Supercoils. And to be honest with you, Supercoils is one of my absolute most favorite yarns. I love it. I think it is beautiful. I just think it's one of the coolest yarns out there that we can make. I don't know why, I just love it. You get 0 yardage for all of that effort of spinning. So I don't know why I'm so in love with it, but I just really like Supercoils. So I spun up all of the Rolex and all of that glitter in there that Nora put in, and all of the Angelina, and they put Firestar in there, and like you name it. And then we Supercoiled it. So I'm not exactly sure what the yardage is. I think I ended up with like, well, I can tell you guys, and then you can do the math for me while I'm talking. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 times 1.5. So like 11 yards. It's like nothing. And I haven't washed and finished it yet, but it right now it looks like wire. It looks like somebody's science experiment, but I just think it is so freaking cool. I just love it. I'll zoom in for you. I think it is so much fun. And these are the types of yarns that I think are so awesome, and I don't care that I personally have no use for them. I wouldn't use them in texture in weaving at this stage of what I'm working on. I'll share with you guys in a minute what I'm working on for weaving right now. And yeah, I just love them. I think they're so much fun. Amanda says they look like gummy worms. So much fun. Yeah, they look like those gummy worm, like the worms that you can get. But I don't know, I just love Supercoils. I think they're really fun. For the core, I just used a commercial worsted yarn. That's why it's tied with this black yarn here, because it's just a commercial worsted. I didn't want it to be too thin. I find if your core for your Supercoils is too thin, the core spun, if that's what you're using for your Supercoil, it's just too narrow. It needs something that it can wrap around, that it can actually form a tube. And so I find if your core is too fine, you just end up with problems. That's been my experience. So I tend to use a worsted weight, and Aran weight works really well. If you go any thicker, you don't get any yardage, right? Because then you have more circumference to wrap around, and you're losing all of that yardage. There's a reason why when you see these yarns posted on Etsy, why they're like $100. $150 for just a few yards. They are incredibly time consuming to make, and they use a lot of material. So yeah, it's so funny you would say that, Janine. That's exactly what I've been doing. I will often put them on a branch, and I hang them so that I can just admire them. So I'll straighten them out and get them to twist on themselves. I'll put it around the branch, and then I'll tie it into a skein so that it hangs on the branch like that. And then I can just kind of admire it and look at it. Once I steam finish this and it kind of, hangs a bit better and it hangs straighter, I'll sometimes even just hang it on the branch just like this, and I'll hang it up, and they'll just hang, and they're just pops of color, something fun to look at. Yeah, so if anybody has any questions about this, let me know. Twist it with a string of lights at Christmas. Totally, Sam, or put it in Nora's bedroom. So we have a palette in the kids' hallway, and it's all different colors. I painted it, and it's got swim with mermaids, dance with fairies, chase rainbows. I can't remember what the other one is. I'll take a picture of it and I'll post it in the Slack channel later. And there's a space next to it, and I was actually thinking about getting a little tiny branch because the colors match of the paint that I used for the palette. And I was thinking about putting a little branch, retying this, finishing this off, and hanging this next to it because it's the same colors, like it's all the same. Anyways, all these things I'm thinking about. Our upstairs is all ripped apart right now because we're in the middle of renos. So I'm thinking about all these things of like how can I, you know, redo things when we put it all back together. Eve asked what the difference is between a beehive and a cocoon. So a beehive is added to singles after, like as you're spinning and as you're making your yarn. And a cocoon is where you create, we've done it before in the teaching content, you use differential tension to create a knot, and then you spiral ply, push it up, make differential tension to change your angles again to make a knot to hold the cocoon, and then you continue on. They're really fun to make. I encourage you guys to review some of that content that we've done in the past and have a look. Lisa, great question. What do people do with their Supercoils? A lot of people just enjoy making them, and it's really fun. I know Imoni of Hopkins Fiber Studio, she does these massive textured weavings, and she incorporates those yarns into them, and it's very cool. So that's sort of what comes to mind, is most people will incorporate them into their massive textured weavings. Really easy to do on the rigid heddle, tapestry looms, especially if you're kind of looking at that type of stuff. It would look gorgeous as a border in a weaving project, totally, if that's sort of what you're into. Yeah, there seems to be a food theme going on. You're absolutely right. Eve, you guys were talking about ginger beer earlier. Yeah, Lisa says that the yarn looks like fruity cereal. Dorothy says, I don't want to eat that yarn. Supercoils, yuck. We've all got food on the brain. It's probably because I haven't had lunch. I'm hungry. I'm definitely ready for some food. I'm having potatoes for lunch. Surprise, surprise. So for weaving, we'll go back to the product camera. I am kind of in this weird spot right now where I ripped out wool and honey. I made the decision at soccer practice on Friday. We were sitting there. The weather was kind of borderline. It was sort of trying to get sunny. I was sitting out there in the sun. I was looking at the kids. I was watching them. They were having so much fun. They were so in the moment. And I was looking at the sweater, and I tried it on one more time, and I was like, the neck is just too tight. And that's really what was bothering me. And so I just made a decision in that moment. I am in the moment. I am making tons of changes right now. I'm sort of in the midst of sort of doing some pivoting in our own life. This is a perfect opportunity to just start fresh. And I ripped it out. So I currently have nothing on the needles. And I think that what I'll do is when I feel like I have some time and some space, I have plans to use that yarn for, I think it's called Brecken. Let me just double check. It's an Amy Christopher's pattern, and it's called Brecken. It was in Wool People for Brooklyn Tweed. Ooh, I want to say like 2012, June of 2012. It was in Brooklyn Wool People, the 3rd volume. So I'm thinking about that. It's kind of at the forefront of my mind. That's really what I'm thinking. No, after party is finished. I just have to weave in ends. To be honest with you, I've been waiting for some good weather so I can wash it and block it and get it finished. Get it like finished, because I never photographed Lunenburg, after party, or Gustava, or what was the other sweater that I just finished? See, this is why it's getting really bad. I don't even remember. Farmhouse. Those 4 sweaters, none of them got photographed like properly. As the Knitmore girls say, like finished, like it's cast off, ends are woven in, and it's photographed and uploaded on Ravelry. That's when it's like really done. None of that got done with any of those sweaters. So long story short, after party is finished. It's just that I have to weave in the ends and then wash it and block it. So I'm just waiting for some beautiful weather, to be totally honest with you. So in terms of, so I'm kind of in this like transition period right now with my projects because my jack loom is warped with the towel project that I'm going to show you in just a moment. And then my Jane loom is actually warped up with this project, which is my finger manipulated lace for Unit 3 for the OHS. So this is a, it's about a 6-inch wide warp. It's 100% linen, 16/2, and this is 1x1 lino. And then my pickup stick is weaving 2x2 lino. And you have to do 5 5 samples that are actually given to you in the OHS handouts. So they tell you exactly what they want you to do for each of your sort of samples. So that's done. I'm just waiting for them to dry because they're all still wet. And now I need to start working on my original samples. So you take those 5 things, lino, Danish medallions, Spanish lace, Mexican lace, and Brooks bouquet. Those are the 5 different samples, and then you kind of make them your own, and you submit 5 originals that are kind of your own take on those things. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do. So the Jane has this project on it, and then my spring upstairs is half threaded with the Have Drawl towels from Ariana Funk, and that was a pattern that was published on Gist Yarn. So I've been trying without any success whatsoever to get those threaded, and once they're threaded, then I can like start working on them, and I have the yarns for that ready to go. So the only project that I finished that I can actually share with you is my M's and O's. So this is a weave structure that literally is supposed to look like M's and O's when you're done. So that's the M there, and there's the O. And I did this in 2/8 cotton. I did quite a bit of sampling before I ended up settling on a set. I started off with a little bit more open. I wove these at 18 ends per inch originally with the 8/2 cotton. Sorry, it's 8/2 cotton because it's spun and made in Canada. This is Maurice Brassard cotton. So it's worsted spun. And if you're wondering about some of that and the yarn discussion and whatnot, check out School of Sweet Georgia. Amanda, help me out here, and Vicky, is it A Good Yarn was the course that Laura Fry differentiates between the different types of 2/8 cotton, 8/2 cotton, what's American, what's Canadian? Because she also did the article and wrote the article. But I think it was called A Good Yarn, and it's on the School of Sweet Georgia. Thanks, Vicky. Vicky to save me. On the School of Sweet Georgia. So this is 8/2 worsted spun Canadian cotton. And I originally set these towels at 18 ends per inch. And it was just too open. The M's, when I went to wash and finish it, the M's were kind of boggy. They weren't making a nice O in the O section. And then the M's were just kind of a bit too open and a bit too, they just weren't kind of, really locking down and really sort of making that shape that you want to see, that O shape and that M shape. It just was not working. The colors, the reason for the colors is mostly just to use up some of these cones of 8/2 cotton that are in my stash that are kind of, they're half done or they're a quarter done, there's a quarter left on it, or, they're kind of a one-off. So I just took a whole bunch of them and I piled them up, and I sort of got rid of some that I thought wouldn't work at all. And I'll just hold these away from the camera for just a moment. But I think from a distance, they actually create a really lovely faux plaid. And I'll hold them out for you so that you can see the whole towel. And then you can really see what I mean. But they're just really effective. I think they really came out quite nicely, and they have a nice look to them. So I used blues and yellows and black and some brown, threw in a bit of army camo green. And then for just kind of a little bit of a zinger along with the yellow, I put in a little bit of light, that really super light greeny teal in there. And so I wove off 3 of these after I had sort of decided on set. I wove off 3, and 2 of them went to each of James and Nora's teachers for the end of the year. And then this 3rd one is for their tutor, because Maureen does so much for us. It's just been incredible. So for the teachers in the crowd, and for those who are kind of, have kids that are, that you're very aware of, like, their literacy needs and reading and writing, and maybe it hasn't come as intuitively as maybe it did for other people. James has jumped up to grade level. He is now at grade level, but he has also gone up 2 full years in his reading level, which is just like, a lot of that is because of Maureen, because she just keeps telling me what to do. She's like, "Hey, now I want you to do this. Now I want you to do this." So it's been just a huge, like, I think for James, actually, it's been a big sigh of relief for him. We were in the library yesterday, and he just kept saying, like, "Oh, I could read this book, and I could read this book, and I could read this book." And it's still harder for him. Like, he still has to really work at it. And if a book has too much text, it's tiring. But he's trying, and that's what matters. And he's not putting up roadblocks anymore, because he was fighting us on everything because it was too hard. And when you're not getting any wins, you just want to give up, right? Like at 40, I want to give up when it's too hard. So I can't imagine what it must have been like when he was 7 and 8, in the wake of my dad having passed away, and trying to figure out what we were going to do. And he's just, everything was so hard. He's not like Nora, who's a very intuitive learner. She just kind of gets it. She just understands. And with James, it's like, well, what do they want? What do they mean? Why? That was exactly like what I was like. And it actually took me until grad school to really kind of start to realize what it was they were asking for, what they wanted to see, why they were asking for it in that way, what was expected. Like, it took me a long time to sort of work through all of that and to figure that out. And it's been, I think I got James as my son for a reason, because I can help him with that right from the get-go. Because this is stuff that James never experienced, or that Mike never experienced. He, like Nora, is a very intuitive learner. So yeah, it's been interesting. My niece is the exact same way. And so we've been talking a lot with my brother and sister-in-law about, like, what I needed at that age. And it's really helped them to understand. Just when you're not an intuitive learner, and I know there's many people out there that aren't, how do you word things, and how do you present things in a way that gets you there a little bit faster, so that you're not just slugging away and trying to figure it out and getting papers back that was like, well, that's not what was asked for. And you're looking at the instructions going, well, now I get it, but I didn't see that originally, if that makes sense. Getting them excited about reading is so important. I have my daughter reading 4 levels above her grade. That's awesome, Dion. And if they can do that, that's incredible. And obviously not all kids can do that, but when they can, I mean, it's just so awesome. In hindsight, I wish we had sent James to kindergarten at least well on his way with reading. I think he needed to be a little bit further along with his journey when he went to school than he was, and that really set him at a disadvantage, unfortunately. So yeah, Eve, I don't think that you're unusual. I never learned how to write an essay. Totally. I don't think that that's unusual. I think there's a lot of kids that kind of get left behind, and yeah, it's heartbreaking, because it shouldn't be that way, right? Okay, so that is that stuff. The other thing, I'm not going to share it with you just because I've talked about it so much. My support spindles, I have continued to fill them up. Maybe I will. I don't know if we're going to get to community participation today, but we will see. I have continued just working my way through my Cormo, and I've been working primarily with my Mirkwood spindle. This is the POC spindle here. This one, the camera's not focusing. It's one of my absolute most favorite spindles. I love this spindle. And I just have been working with it a ton. And so it's getting really full. I think it started to kind of act a little bit janky. And so I think I'm kind of getting to that point where it's like, okay, I should probably wind you off. And so I've been filling up my Silly Salmon, which is this one over here. This one is my Woodland Handcrafts. And then this is Yarn Spindles from Maine on Etsy. And Glenda was actually saying this morning he doesn't have a ton of spindles on his site right now, which is really too bad because they're some of my favorites. And then my Alan Berry spindles, he's on Instagram. You have to get on a wait list with him. You just send him a message. I've been slowly filling this one up. So I was working on this one last night while James was at tutoring. and that's been really great. So I've just been really slowly like working my way through, being really intentional about making sure that I'm working on it every day. And, you know, even if it's only 15, 20 minutes, every single day I do a little bit. And I am actually getting to the end of the fleece, and it's not within reaching distance of me. It's over there, but I am down to the last third of the pound. I cannot believe it. So I have this to spin, and then I get to go back into that bag over there and start to wind off another couple of butterflies. So I've been winding off these butterflies, just like Brittany does of Crux Fibers. She winds it off on a butterfly, and then pre-drafting them. And I've been spinning through them, and actually it's been kind of nice to do that because the VM sort of just naturally falls out. And I've been having like keeping 2, 3 of them on me at all time. And this is my last one before I go into the bag again. And then I'll be down to like the last 8. It's so exciting. So it's a whole pound of Cormo that I've been spinning and working on. And my goal is to have it spun by the end of the year. So I might actually have it done by the end of the summer. Like, I don't know, maybe. I think it's like really exciting, especially when you can see the end in sight with a big project like this. Like, it's been a big project. So this time last year, we did a spin along throughout the summer. It started on the summer solstice and it ended on the eve of the fall equinox. And I think we're going to do that again. So we're going to sort of resurrect our spindle spun summer. People down under, because it's their winter, they had asked us not to call it spindle spun summer because they're in the middle of winter. So I totally get that. I understand. So we'll keep calling it spindle spun stitches. But as of today, start posting in the Slack channel and start posting. I will resurrect the thread on Ravelry for spindle spun stitches. I think it's still there. Let me just make sure. I'm going to start coughing here in a minute, so I just have to yeah, spindle spun stitches is still there. It's stickied at the top of the Ravelry group. And if you want to start sharing all of your spindling projects and all of the things that you're working on, suspended, support, whatever you're working on that's spindle related, we will start sort of doing random little like sort of giveaways throughout the summer on each show to just honor people who they're working away on their spindle spun stitches throughout this sort of season, throughout the summer. So spindle spun summer. So I think what I'll do is I'll put it in the show notes, this sort of spindle spun stitches / spindle spun summer, to kind of remind people that this is actually like a spin along that goes through the summer. And we'll do that for until the fall equinox. And I'll sort of give some like, you know, pony style roll eggs and some bats, and we'll just do a few little giveaways over the course of the summer as we live stream each show. I think that'd be really fun. Dion said she just received 2 drop spindles in the mail today. That's awesome. And Mary Jo says, when my son was little, it was always hard to find books he was interested in. I found it easier to find books that interested my daughter, but boys' subject matter was hard to find. That is a huge problem. And if anybody has read Jumpstarting Boys, it's a great book for those who are mothers and fathers of boys. It's a great book, but they talk about that in there, about the lack of fiction for men and the lack of fiction for boys. And I think that's been one of our biggest stumbling blocks, has been trying to find some stuff that James is actually interested in, that has a good story, that's not just completely dumb. He is really into Dave Pilkey right now, but that's kind of where his humor is at. You know, he's a 9 turning 10-year-old boy, so everything about the bathroom is hilarious. So if he's reading Captain Underpants and Dog Man and Cat Kid and everything right now, he's not going to be reading it when he's 30. At least I hope not. So yeah, but the finding stuff is really hard. It's still SSS. That's right, Florence. Yeah. Thank you for joining us. Oh my goodness, Florence. What time is it where you are? What is the difference in South American supported spindles that mean more fiber can be put on them? I'm not sure I'm following your question completely, Eve. I might have to talk to you about that after. I'm not sure. And then finally, my Cotswold fleece. So on the first episode of the Wool Circle this month, which I'm taking a break from through the summer, the post went out last week about that. I did some sampling on the wool circle about sort of how I was going to spin this. I'm still not convinced. I'm not really sure. I think I'll probably do the 2-ply and then I can weave with this, but my plan is to hand comb it and to spin it true worsted, and that'll be kind of my big project throughout the summer. I've had this fleece in my stash for since the summer of 2019. So I would like to at least start chipping away at it, even if it's not the only thing that I work on. But these locks they're quite long, and they just really lend themselves to being spun. This is the tips, they're nice and curly, to being spun true worsted. And I'll get out my hackle and I'll do it outside. There's some different colors. And I thought, you know, if I mix it up and create like a really heathered, beautiful yarn, there's not really enough to go from really light to dark and make a gradient. There isn't really enough. But maybe after I hackle a whole bunch and I have them sitting in front of me, I could make a decision then about doing some sort of a gradient. Maybe it'd be kind of neat to have like a blanket that was sort of a gradient. I am thinking about weaving with this. You know, a blanket, you know, something really done full width on the jack loom at 45 inches and having like a, you know, I guess that would be a double bed size is 45 inches, or is that queen? Does anybody know off the top of their head? Anyways, so I've got all these beautiful locks to play with, and gorgeous colors. Now there's VM all over the table, but that's okay. And that'll be my project for the summer. So I'm looking forward to that. All this dust everywhere now. All right, let's get to community participation, because otherwise I'm never gonna get lunch. Okay, so funny story. Rebecca says Diary of a Wimpy Kid is a big winner. So James does not like those books at all. I don't know why. We've tried them a couple of times. He has a couple of them. He does not like them. And thank you, Dion. I'll look into 39 Clues, and I'll look at the Vordak series. Thank you so much for that. And Scott Seegert. Thank you, Dorothy. And actually, one of the things that he's really into is the Camp Cretaceous series. He really likes that. They're very adventure based. He's not super keen on Wings of Fire. He's not a high fantasy kid, although he likes Harry Potter. And we've read all of the, up to and including book 5. We haven't gone past book 5 just yet, but yeah, and they loved, oh, for anybody looking for some great books for both boys and girls, and anybody who doesn't identify as either, The Land of Stories. Check those books out. They are phenomenal. And the guy who reads them is also the guy who wrote them, who is also one of the main characters on Glee. And he is incredible at reading. He is phenomenal. So Land of Stories. All right, these are all the things that we have going on in our community right now. The big ones to make note of is our current breed and color study on Radnor, and the spindle spun stitches, which will be going on more intentionally until the end of September. So we'll be giving out some prizes for spindle spun stitches specifically. So watch out for that. Now I have to find my PowerPoint because otherwise I can't keep going. So this one is from Rebecca. This is for the sock color study that she's spearheading right now and working through. I saw this yarn when we were with them in Jasper back in May, and it is so beautiful. These photos do not do it justice. But these started out as half of 2 braids of Superwash BFL, which I believe I linked earlier in the thread. So if you're interested in looking at this particular, excuse me, sorry guys, this particular thread and looking on Ravelry, it's under the sock color Sal, spin along. It should really be a spackle because it's spin along, knit along, but because it's socks, but that's okay. I broke it into the more purple half and the more blue-green half. One of these skeins has all the green and the other one has a little less green and very little purple. I don't know about you, but I have a hard time capturing the green on the camera with any subtlety, so you'll have to take my word for it that one of these skeins and socks is noticeably greener than the other. And actually it's funny because in this photo you can see that the one that's at the very, very far right of your screen is greener. The learning for this pair was mostly about color. The true analogous skein, the green, blue and green, came out looking just as that, blue and green. The skein that had a bit of green and a bit of purple, therefore containing at least some of the three primaries, reads as definitely blue, but the complements mute the blue down to look more blue jean blue. You can tell me blue. You can tell the blue in the blue-green skein is a bit more saturated. Super, super pretty. Beautiful. Oh, take care, Lisa. Thank you so much for being here. She has to go be a productive member of society. I get that. This is from Christina. She had a fabulous fun day with Florence, who's in chat today. Florence, I would love to meet Florence and Christina in real life. They just sound like a total hoot. At an organized spin-in where I spun the skein since dyed deep brown, a beautiful soft Corriedale fiber kindly given to me from Florence at our recent two-person retreat. I was also lucky enough to spot from the many traders a stunning blue-gray Corriedale fleece, which with minimal encouragement from Florence, I purchased 1 kilo of. That looks amazing, Christina. I thought that was the end of a great day, but after watching a hosted demo using a Magikarp hackle, and again a conversation with Florence, she's the best, I now have one on order. Estimated time of arrival is 4 to 6 weeks. I can hardly wait. I have a Magikarp hackle, and I have to say, Christina, it is awesome. I love it. Dana said the socks are really pretty and the fiber blended nicely. It is. I totally agree, Dana. Beautiful socks, says Charlotte. This is from Alicia. I've finished some hand spun socks. I love the color and the fiber. It was a BFL mohair. And if you guys recognize this colorway, it is Katrina's Fractured Dawn colorway. This is fiber from Crafty Jacks. But I'm challenged with getting the bind off quite right. I don't mind toe-up socks until I get to the bind off, and then I just struggle. I typically knit cuff down with a twisted German cast on, which makes for the perfect amount of stretch. For these socks, I tried binding off loosely, but it ended up being too tight, and the knit two together bind off, but it was too loose. See the photo. And then I've also tried Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off in the past with varying luck. Do any of you have a fail-safe bind off for toe-up socks? So I actually use the bind off that is in Elizabeth Zimmerman's Knitting Without Tears. It's a sewn bind off, and that's the one that I use. But if anybody else has any bind offs that they would like to share in chat, that would be really helpful. Because yeah, it is really frustrating. And one thing, Alicia, that I have found is that you actually, when you use these stretchy bind offs, you actually need to make them quite tight. So like Jenny's surprisingly stretchy bind off, when I do use it, I actually do it quite tight. Which seems kind of counterintuitive, but it's what works. Oh, I love that you guys are still sharing books. Thank you so much. I will go back and look after. Charlotte likes the idea of BFL mohair for socks. Haven't tried it yet. I love my Wensleydale mohair socks. They are fantastic. They're a little bit toothy, but they have lasted and worn in my hiking boots beautifully. This is from Suzanne. Any tips on spinning thicker consistently? I am aiming for 20 wraps per inch for my singles, and I can do pretty well with a short backward draft, but as soon as I try and switch to long draw, I lose consistency. It's a 50-50 commercial Rambouillet and local alpaca, ranging about 2.5 to 3 inch staples on the alpaca and about 4 to 5 inches on the Rambouillet. So you've got a lot of range there in terms of your staple lengths. There's a lot of difference. I'm wondering if the difference in staple lengths comes more into play because they space because of the space I draft over. So yes, absolutely, Suzanne. So I would personally not try to spin these long draw with that much difference in the staple. That's me. I would love to hear what other people have to say. For me personally, I would go with something more like a continuous backward, but maybe no pinching, like no smoothing all of that air out, leave the air in there. but you're gonna find that you have to draft sort of somewhere between the alpaca and the rambouillet to really get a consistent yarn if you're aiming for that 20 wraps per inch. And then once you find, oh, you guys still there? Okay, we're still there, we're still here. OBS reconnected. Win. You're gonna have to find that sweet spot between drafting just far enough to catch the rambouillet and not make it too thick, but that you're not losing the alpaca every single time. So you're gonna have to find like a sweet spot there, so that you can catch that. So play around with it, but I would consider going to a continuous back rather than like a short forward or a long draw, because yeah, you're going to lose consistency. But if you go to a continuous back, so draft back, then on, you'll be able to control your distance and make sure that that's really super consistent. And you just have to find that sweet spot of where that 20 wraps per inch is. And Sharon says you could try spinning it from the fold. You've got these beautiful row legs, so I would personally maybe go with like the continuous back and give that a try. All right, this is from Kelly. I thought this was amazing. She is a brand new weaver, and she's been just weaving up a storm. So she's done a color gamp schlanklet. I think that's so funny. A shawl style blanket for her kiddo in superwash merino. It's mostly from last year's Junk Yarns 12 Days of Christmas calendar. And then she used a School of Sweet Georgia pattern for that. And then she did the radiant towels that are also from the School of Sweet Georgia. But they were made bigger than the original pattern, and she used 8-2 cotton. I know which cotton she used. It wasn't 2-8, it was 8-2. It was Canadian spun. And then a couple of sets of the X's and O's coasters from Amanda Ratage in leftover wool of the Andes worsted. Didn't those turn out beautifully? I love her coasters there. So just a myriad of new projects off the loom. She's a brand new weaver, so well done. Well done. Oh my gosh, Dion, you are so funny. Now I want cinnamon rolls. You are too funny. Christine says that she would recommend spinning continuous back as well, but maybe a hop, so no smoothing. Yeah, kind of more like what I do. Amanda says, I find the sweet spot for these kinds of blends is closer to the shorter staple length. Absolutely, Amanda, I totally agree. And when I spun that blend a little while ago, that was the yak merino, I very much had to spin. It was a 50-50 blend, so the merino, the wool, took a back seat, and it very much spun like the yak, and so I had to spin it as if it was yak, and that's how I got a consistent yarn. Yeah, beautiful weaving, says Dana. This is from Dorothy. So she's in the virtual group with me for the OHS for the Unit 3 for the finger manipulated lace, and this is her first try, which is awesome. Same as me, we're both kind of on this learning journey, which is amazing. This is from Greta Lynn. I thought this was really interesting, and I would love to hear what you guys think. So please get your fingers ready to tell me what you think, because I'm not really sure. Here is a fleece I got from my hometown where I used to bike as a kid. It's East Frisian, and some of the lanolin was left in it. I carded a bunch up last night, and the bat is pretty good, but it dragged on the drum carder when I fed it in. I totally doubted that I would like it, as it seemed so crispy. It's not a spinner's flock, but the sample yarn is really pleasant. It was spun long draw, and when I washed it, it dried fluffy and charming. I can see it as a bulky knit of some kind, and I'm wondering if I should rewash it in bunches before carding it again. I don't want to stress the teeth of the drum. Any thoughts? So I thought to rewash it. I did that whole Frisian spin a couple of years ago when I did the sweater. That was the Carrie Bostic Hogue. What was that one called? I wear it a lot, actually. It's one of my favorite sweaters. It's very warm, so I don't tend to wear it inside. It's kind of ended up being kind of a bit more of like a jacket, but it was just exactly like this, and it was totally charming. And I would just encourage you, it's very like three-dimensional crimp. There's a lot of like bounce and spraying in the finished yarn. The sweater has held up really beautifully. There has been a bit of pilling, but it's not that bad. I've just had to use my gleaner on it a couple of times. I would encourage you to rewash it and see what happens. Is it the lanolin that is the problem, or is it that the locks need to be opened up more first? So maybe try flicking and then putting it through the drum carder. That would be a bit more work, but it might be worth it, and then you wouldn't have to rewash it. This is why I ask you guys these things. First instinct is to wash a clump and then card it and spin it before deciding. Pop it in the dryer dry, or use a hair dryer to heat the lanolin a bit before carding. That's kind of a cool idea. I haven't heard of that before. Dana says she would rewash. Yeah, so let us know what you end up doing, Gretelin, because I'm actually really, really curious. And then this one's from Kelly. I had several hours with my spindles today, applying a fun and very sparkly braid from Wound Up Fiber Arts. This is 2 ounces of a 2-ply light fingering. It's beautiful. Well done, Kelly. And she can't wait to see it finished. It is gorgeous, those colors, and what a lovely spindle. Look at that carved top. I don't know if you guys can see it in the photo there, but it's just a beautiful spindle. Lovely, lovely spinning. And then she made a plying ball, and she's plying it up on the spindle as well. It's one of the gearhead spindles. I don't know if it's a Schneider spindle or if it's another one. I don't think she said in the Slack channel what it was. And then finally, this is from Mia. I'm kind of in the way of the typing here, so I'll just move myself a little bit. But she says, prepping for 3.5 weeks at the cabin, I needed to decide which spindle and which fibers to bring with me. An excellent opportunity to go through all and empty. One spindle had 10 grams left to spin of a 100-gram roving. Stupid not to just finish it off, so now it's being wound off on a toilet paper roll. It'll be good to work with the spindles again. At home, my wheel gets all the attention. I'm really excited, Mia, to see what you end up making and what you come home with, so you'll have to share with us. And that is it for today. That's a lot of community participation. My voice is very obviously giving out. So thank you so much for sticking with me and for seeing it through to the end. I'm so glad that OBS did not start acting up, because I was getting a little bit stressed there when it was like, we're reconnecting. I'm like, ugh. So thankfully everything worked. I do wonder, Christine, she said if the gearhead is a Schneider, I do wonder. Yeah, those pics of Mia, aren't they Mia's? Dion says she loves those photos. They're really pretty. That's why I wanted to share them. And a couple of people finished off sweaters in the last week or so. Dana finished off one, and there was a couple other ones. And Sam shared just a beautiful wrap dress that she just pulled out, that she finished up during lockdown that she was sharing. So there's lots of more community participation to share with you guys next time that I'm really excited about. So I hope you'll tune in then. So until next time, happy spinning, happy all the things. I hope that you're using your hand spun. Don't hesitate to tag me in all of the things on the Slack channel at WelfordPearls_admin, and on Instagram, Woolen Spinning, and on Ravelry, I'm Woolen Spinning. Am I Woolen Spinning on Ravelry, or am I still Welford Pearls? I can't even remember. I'm Welford Pearls still. Welford Pearls is kind of, I've ended up slowly phasing it out, but it was always my username. And then I've sort of slowly started using Woolen Spinning just so that people aren't looking for me in multiple places under multiple names. So if you're ever unsure, you can always check Woolen Spinning. So I will see you guys next time. We will be live streaming again on July 5th. I hope that I will see you then. And until then, happy spinning. And please, those who are patrons of the show, especially if you're pledging at the higher levels, if you guys could please go and check the Patreon post about some of the changes that are coming up for July and August. That would be really great. And if you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out to me. And there is a new tier on Patreon. I changed it from the Wool Circle. It is now called the Support Circle. And that will give you access to all of the back issues and all of the back episodes. There's more than 70 episodes of all of this Wool Circle that have been filmed over the last few years. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to reach out, and I will talk to you then. So until next time, happy spinning. Bye, guys.